Welcome to season 2 of Chats from the Chest Freezer. Oh, it's 3.9 degrees in here, so let's not stuff around and let's dive into the new season. Right, before we dive into this chat with Sarah Thomas, let me just point out that I shot this interview way back in February 2020. It's now August, and my God, hasn't the world changed? But luckily for some, the English Channel has opened up. It's so great to be tracking those boats across the channel once more. I know that for many people, their dream for 2020 crossing has been dashed, but at least we're seeing something. And hopefully, for those of you who are out there, listen to Sarah Thomas. She's such an amazing and inspirational woman. And let's hope to God that you get your turn pretty soon. Well, Sarah Thomas, so great to have you here on Chats from the Chest Freezer. It is so wonderful to finally actually talk to you face to face.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah. Now, obviously, Sarah, you gained so much fame for your four-way channel crossing in September last year. But obviously, I want to talk about that, and I want to, everybody wants to hear about that in some more detail. But I reckon let's start back at the start of your love for open water swimming, and that started about 13 years ago when you did a 10K.
Yeah, it did. I swam competitively all through high school and college, and never really tried open water swimming. And I joined a master's team, an adult swim team, after I graduated with a master's degree. And like right away, people on the swim team were like, "Sarah, you got to try this open water thing. You got to try it." And I was like, "I don't know. And 10K seems pretty far." And they chipped away at me over about a year. And it was in 2007 when I was like, "All right, we're going to do this 10K. I think I got it now." And I did. I swam it. And when I came out of the water, I was like almost in tears because I was like, "This is it. I found it. I should have been doing this all along." And that's where it got started.
So what was it like? What did you feel?
It was, I was always a distance swimmer. So um, in all my training, I could just train and train at a high level with like the top people on a swim team. But then when it came time to, race 1,000 or the 1650 or the mile or whatever at a meet, I just didn't perform as well in a race as I knew that I could in training. And so when I found that 10K, it was like, oh, this is long enough for me. And that's like the piece that had been missing. And it just, being in open water and not having to deal with flip turns, not having to, look over and see, 7 other people racing me side by side, it was just so liberating and so freeing. And, the water temperature was really pleasant, and, you're outside and the scenery is beautiful. It was amazing. Yeah, and I was hooked, very much hooked after that one 10K.
You raise a very interesting point, and certainly one of the things I love about open water swimming is, and the long stuff, or just getting out into the ocean or a lake, is that you're not competing, you're not getting timed,
Right.
you can't compare. Is that sort of a
Right.
big part of open water swimming for you?
It is a huge part for me. I'm competitive, but it's more with myself than it is with other people. And I really feel like in open water, it's more of an internal battle, me against the elements rather than me against any other swimmer that's out there. It's such an individual, personal experience when you're in the open water. I don't even care what other people are doing. I'm just there to do my thing, and I'm really happy when I'm doing it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, let's sort of, I've been through all the swims that you've done, and you have I guess, a characteristic of escalating. Now,
That's a good way to put it.
now, like 2010, you did Catalina, 2011, Manhattan, 2012,
Mhm.
English Channel. Uh,
Mhm.
at what point did you feel that you wanted to just keep going further and further, or did every swim just bring you something more?
When I very first started, Catalina was just, I decided to swim that one just as a way to like prove to myself that I could do something hard. And when I finished Catalina, I actually swore that I was done. Like I was in so much pain and I was so exhausted. I was like, all right, that's it. I'm totally, this 20-mile thing is too much. I'm done. But then kind of after that feeling went away, a few weeks later, I was like, you know what? That wasn't so bad. And I found that I had signed myself up for the English Channel, and then I found out about the Triple Crown. So, um, sorry, that was my phone. um, but so I signed up for the English Channel, and Manhattan was kind of just like another box to tick as I was waiting for my English Channel slot. So, initially it was like, oh, I'll just do my Triple Crown and then I'll be done. Um, but when I had such an amazing experience in the English Channel in 2012, that was really what said, you know what, Sarah, maybe you can swim longer than this. And really, started trying to think about other swims maybe outside the box that I could do and try to see what would happen.
So let's talk about your first English Channel swim. 11 hours 23. A good solid swim, and I think sort of you're not the fastest swimmer in the world, just a real solid, good speed swimmer, and you don't tend to slow down as you get longer. But I read that you hopped out of the English Channel, when you finished at France, and felt like that you could have turned around and gone back.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I finished. They landed me at the restaurant that's right there off the cap, and the whole restaurant that's there, they all started like running outside. And at first I thought I was in trouble. I was like, oh no, I'm not supposed to be here. They're going to be mad at me for coming onto their beach. And then they brought me out champagne, and, I'm standing there and I'm like, I'm not tired. Like that was an amazing day on the water. And that really did kind of serve as the catalyst of, 12-hour swim, that's not so far anymore. And maybe I can try something different.
I'm actually a little bit bummed. When I did the English Channel in 2018, I landed right on the cap. And then when I hopped back on the boat, they told me about if you landed just 500 meters north, they bring you champagne.
Yep.
Champagne's my spirit animal. I can't believe I missed
that. Yeah, you totally missed it.
So from there, English Channel, you've obviously just then developed this bug of just trying to find stuff that's bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the following year, you do Lake Tahoe, which was, what was that, 68 kilometers, which is basically a double English Channel crossing.
Right.
So how do you go from English Channel to Lake Tahoe in the space of 12 months?
That is a good question. I was really undertrained for it. I'll leave it at that. But I had, Lake Tahoe is close to where I live. And I live at a similar altitude to Lake Tahoe. And I had for a long time, I had wanted to swim it. They do a race across, the short wave, the Trans Tahoe Relay every year. So for a while I'd heard about that and I'd wanted to do that. So Tahoe had been just a place to swim that had been on my radar for a really long time. And when I finished the English Channel, I was like, I genuinely felt I had trained enough and had done enough to be able to do a double English Channel in that moment. So the thought of, that double Lake Tahoe wasn't too daunting because I knew I wouldn't have to add all that much more to my training to make it work. And a lot of people said it was an impossible swim. And that kind of, you tell me something's impossible or I can't do something, and that's the first thing I'm going to go and try to do. So, it was a lot of, just developing a training plan to go double the distance. Didn't mean doubling the training by any means, and kind of logistically planning it out. my buddy who lives here, Craig Lenning, he had attempted a double crossing the year before and had been out to Lake Tahoe. So he had laid a lot of groundwork. He had a lot of advice. And he and I actually started Lake Tahoe, the double, at the same time as a tandem swim. We had our own crew, our own boats, but we started together, hoping that one of us would be, the first person to make it down and back across Tahoe. And we both finished. I just happened to be a little bit faster, but he did it and I did it, and it was a really cool, fun swim.
Fantastic. So back then, tell me about your training, in preparation for Tahoe. Like what kind of kilometers and what was your general weekly routine?
Yeah, so that's stretching back a little bit. Let's see here. I will tell you that was a crazy year in general. I started a new job in February, and we were basically opening a brand new hospital. So my work hours were like really, really insane in February, March, and April. I swam SCAR that year, and it was slightly later in May. So I went into SCAR pretty undertrained, um, but I didn't have any issues at SCAR. So then I was maybe a little bit optimistic that I could kind of build up some base before we went to Lake Tahoe. Um, so I came back from SCAR, and then like 2 weeks later, Craig got invited to be on the Bering Strait relay. So we had to bump up our Tahoe date by like a month. Um, and so then all of a sudden it was a scramble of like, oh my goodness, I haven't trained that well for SCAR. I started a new job, we bought a house, we're doing, major renovations on the house. And now all of a sudden, my Tahoe timeline is moved up a month. So generally speaking, just for a regular swim, I try and get to like 60 kilometers for about 5 or 6 weeks and hold it there. For the original plan for Tahoe is that we wanted to get up, a few weeks at maybe 80 or 90 in a week, but we didn't make it there. I think I only had maybe 3 weeks at about 70K. So I went into it a little bit nervous, but it was enough training between the SCAR and the base that I had, and just bumping up for a few weeks. Got it done.
So then, something like that, because after Lake Tahoe, and I actually don't know how you pronounce it up in Quebec, Lake how do you say that?
Memphremagog. Yeah.
Memphremagog.
Memphrey for
Memphremagog.
short.
What's that, sorry?
Memphrey for short.
Memphrey. So that was only a few months after, like only 2-3 months after Lake Tahoe, an 80-kilometer
like
swim.
7 weeks.
Oh, 7 weeks. And a 30-hour swim. This is really sort of the big swim that all of a sudden, I guess, thrusts you onto that world stage of marathon, ultra marathon swimming.
Mm-hmm.
In 7 weeks, you've had to recover from Lake Tahoe, back up from this swim in Quebec.
Yep.
How and what happened? Like, what happened in that 7 weeks? Because it was epic.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was 30 years old, so you can recover a little bit better when you're 30. So I did not plan to do a double Memphis. I had signed up. They do, it's called In Search of Memphis, which is just one length of the lake, and that's an annual event that they do. So I had signed up for that. And after I did the double Tahoe, the race director called me on the phone, and he said, "Hey, Sarah, have you ever thought about, doing another double?" And I said, "Well, I was thinking about, the English Channel in a few years, maybe." And he said, "No, I mean Memphis. Do you want to double Memphis?" And I said, "I don't think that I can do that. Like the recovery, I'm kind of torn up from this. I don't know about that." So I told him I would think about it and see if I could kind of take a couple of weeks to recover and then bump up my training again in time to kind of feel good. So I didn't actually commit to doing the whole thing until maybe like a week or two out. And finally I said, "All right, we're gonna do this." So we did, and it's honestly that swim, that Memphis swim, really serves as a foundation for me starting to like really think like, okay, if I did a double Tahoe, I did a Memphis, So many things went wrong on that double Memphis swim. 2 days before we flew out, my husband threw out his back. He could barely walk. All we had for that swim was just like a 13-foot aluminum boat. We didn't have a GPS. We had a laminated map. The weather was not enjoyable. It was very windy, cloudy, overcast. And somehow, just between me, my husband, and our friend Bill, who we didn't even know, we met him like the day before the swim. The three of us went down and back. And so if you make it through something like that and you're still smiling at the end of it, your brain does start to churn and think, okay, I just did 50 miles, took me 30 hours without the best preparation, without the best equipment, with, a really small team. I think they were peeing in an Nalgene bottle the whole way across because, they're just on a little teeny tiny boat. If you can make a swim like that in those kind of conditions, you can probably do a lot more.
So then, obviously, you've recognised that you've got this absolute talent, but not just a talent, just an absolute passion for going further. Now, at that point, was it a sense of going after records, or a sense of pushing yourself further to see how far you could go?
It's always about pushing myself to see how far I can go. It's never been about a record. I do enjoy, I've done a few swims where I have been one of the first people to do it. And it is fun to take on a lake or, a body of water where no one has actually crossed it before. That has an appeal to me just because it's new and it's fresh and, it's kind of your own personal challenge, but it's not about a record. It's not about, being well known. It's about seeing what my body and my mind and my team can do.
Fantastic. And, you currently hold the 3 longest unassisted swims in the world, with Lake Powell, Lake Champlain, and also your English Channel 4-way crossing. Your English Channel 4-way crossing isn't your longest swim you've ever done.
No.
What was it? 104
not by time,
miles?
not by distance.
Yes, exactly. So 104 miles of Lake Champlain in August 2017. 67 hours. 67 hours is, for anybody trying to stay awake for 67 hours, is virtually impossible. Mentally, how do you prepare?
You don't. You just tell yourself that you're going to do it, and you do it. When I was training for Lake Powell the previous year, I was really, really worried, really freaked out about the staying awake part of it. There's not many people in the world who stay awake for that long, on purpose anyway. And so, I did try and find people to talk to who had maybe stayed awake that long. I've got a physician friend and he does surgeries, and he said, I've stayed awake for a long time. And, he gave me the advice, once you start taking caffeine, you can't stop taking caffeine because your body needs it, even if it didn't need it before. So, I was able to get some advice there. And really, one of the turning points for me that summer, and kind of like mentally wrapping my brain around it, was that someone recommended that I watch the Barkley Marathons documentary.
Yes.
And so I'm watching this documentary of all these ultra runners who are, attempting this crazy and insane race. And I'm like, these are my people, like these runners, they're doing what I'm doing or attempting to do at that point, and they're living to tell about it. And, that race, the cap is 60 hours, and, you're watching the documentary, and it's taking them, 50 to 60 hours, and they're on their feet and navigating in the woods and in the dark and in the rain. And I said, it's possible. And that really, I think I watched that documentary 3 times that summer, just to remind myself that this is possible. Humans can actually do things like this. So, has it been done in the swimming world? No, but there's a group of runners and they're doing it. And that really, I don't know, I found a love for ultra marathon runners after that. So now I'm kind of a fangirl for all the marathon runners out there.
Oh, that's great. My first guest for this year in Chats from the Chest Freezer is actually Lazarus Lake, the creator of the Barkley
Yeah.
Marathons,
Yeah.
and interviewing the top 4 from his Big's backyard from 2019. Maggie Gattell, who won it in 60 hours,
Right.
finished looking so fresh. And the problem
Right.
with the last one standing format that they're racing is that you need 2 people, one person to push
Right.
you all the way.
Yep.
But they're looking at being able to go to 100 hours this year. That's what they're thinking. Now,
Yep.
your swim in 2017 of 67 hours,
Mm-hmm.
the big difference is that they can, shut their eyes for 5 minutes, 10 minutes
Right.
and have a bit of a lie down. But you obviously
Right.
can't do that when you're in the water. What happens to your mind in those later stages post 40 hours? Where does your mind go? And how do you stop yourself from closing your eyes and going to sleep?
Yeah. In my first really long swim, I had a harder time kind of in the 20 to 24-hour range trying to stay awake than I did during the second night. And I was kind of trying to tell myself, well, maybe if I like shut my eyes, I can swim a couple of strokes and, maybe get like a micro sleep as I'm swimming. It does not work. um, I need to know where I'm headed. And, even shutting my eyes for a couple of strokes, I was in danger of smashing into the boat and the kayak next to me. So um, the first time I did it, truly, I was just petrified over it. It almost ruined my swim because I was so afraid of staying awake for a second night. Um, then kind of when you're in the moment and you're doing it, you really do just tell yourself, I'm just swimming 30 minutes at a time. If you think about, I have to swim 67 hours, 50 hours, and I have to stay awake that whole time, it's too big. Your brain can't comprehend that, but your brain can comprehend 30 minutes at a time. So when you're in those dark places and you're sleep deprived and you're trying to focus on what you're doing, you really do just have to tell yourself, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes. Um, in the English Channel this summer, my second night was rough. I was really nauseous and not feeling very well. And I was literally just repeating over and over in my head, like, I will swim through this whole night. And I just on repeat. And that is what my focus was. I wasn't thinking about anything else other than I will swim through this whole night. And eventually the nighttime ends and it's daytime. And when the sun comes up, it's a refreshing moment, and you don't feel the sleep deprivation as much in the daylight as you do when you're trying to fight through the night.
So talking about your 4-way swim, and when I do my long swims, I'm able to completely make my mind go blank, and so my 30 minutes feel like 5. And
Mhm.
I've read that
Right.
you do exactly the same thing.
Mhm.
However, on this 4-way, you weren't able to blank out your mind at all.
Yeah, I do. That's what people always. What do you think about? And normally, nothing. That is the ideal. Because yeah, you'll be like, oh, that was 30 minutes already. I will say parts of this English Channel 4-way, I was able to do that. But for huge sections of it, it was a grind. Like, God, this is the longest 30 minutes of my entire life. Um, but it does. Whether you're in the groove and you're blank or you're focusing on things, you still tell yourself it's just 30 minutes. And I can always do another 30 minutes, wherever your headspace is. There's negative thoughts that go through your mind, there's happy thoughts, and you just have to take it and just be okay with it.
So after it took you 36 hours approximately to do your first 3 laps of the English Channel.
Mm-hmm.
You're standing on the on the rocks in France, ready to jump back in to something that nobody had ever done before. What was going through your mind when you realised that you were going to be the first person ever to have started that part?
Mhm. So I will say the realization that I was going to be the first person to start a fourth link actually came to me midway through lap 3. I'd had a really rough night. There was lots of puking and vomiting. It was rough. I was whining that, I didn't have what it takes. I wasn't going to make it. They were really close to pulling me out because I was throwing up so much. So, I had a really rough night, and then, things started to gradually improve for me. Started to feel a lot better. My stomach settled. I was, taking in my nutrition like I needed to. I was still swimming at a really, decent speed considering that I was on lap 3 of the English Channel. So, kind of once I realized that I was fine, that I was going to be able to overcome that night of just deep, dark sickness, that was the moment when I realized we're going to make the turn. I had promised a friend, whether I thought I could make a full 4 laps or not, that I would make the turn. During lap 2, I didn't think that I was going to make the turn for lap 3. But, in the middle of lap 3, I was like, you know what? We're going to do this. I'm fine. As long as I stay fine, we're going to turn. So we knew going into the turn, there was no doubt in anyone on my crew's mind that we were going to turn around and swim back to England. And I was I was just totally fine. I was tired, but physically I was still 100% fine. So in my pre-race meeting or pre-swim meeting with the boat captain, he had told me, he said, if you make 3 laps, he's like, I can get you back to England. He's like, it's a big, huge island. No matter where we land, I can float you back to England like a log if we need to. And so, my whole team, we were prepared, at that turn. So it was just like clockwork. That last turn, they gave me some oatmeal to eat. I lubed myself back up with extra lanolin, and we went off. And that was probably the best turn of the whole swim. We went off with confidence, and away we went.
Interesting you say you went off with confidence. In December, I was the first person to attempt to swim the English Channel in winter. And just jumping into the water, was making a bit of history. And what it also meant, though, was that there was no pressure on myself. There's certainly, when and if I go to attempt it again, there is pressure now to complete it, but I didn't complete it because of hypothermia. So when you did make that turn, did you feel like all the pressure was then off?
This is silly, but I don't necessarily feel like there was pressure at all during the swim.
Yeah.
No matter what, I had an easy out. You can say, hey, I'm a year out of breast cancer treatment, like just even swimming the English Channel one time is fine. And even like hitting a double, like that's a pretty amazing accomplishment just to swim the English Channel twice in a row. So, I didn't feel a ton of pressure for the swim at all. Whatever happened was going to happen. And I knew I was going to give it my very best shot. So, I will say, making the turn for that, between lap 3 and starting lap 4, it felt more triumphant than anything. And there was a lot of people who said it was impossible. They told me that they didn't think I could make it because of all my treatment. And so it wasn't necessarily like the pressure is gone, but that 4th lap was more like a victory lap than anything.
Tell me, I've always had this saying: if someone tells you you can't do something, they're showing you their limits, not yours. What sort of people were telling you that you couldn't do it?
People on the internet that don't know me. I will say my doctors, when you're in the middle of chemo, right? And you're like, by the way, I've got plans to swim the English Channel 4 times in a year and a half. they look at you a little funny. None of my care team ever said, I don't think that you can do this. They did express maybe some hesitations as to whether or not it would be possible, given everything that I had been through. I did, have checkups with all of my doctors before I left, and, they all said, you're good, you're fine. We don't think that there's anything, physically why you shouldn't attempt this that would put yourself in harm's way, basically. But yeah, there's a lot of doubters out there when you start saying you're going to do big things. I'd only swum the English Channel one time. There's people like Chloe McCardle who have swum it, who I've lost count, in the 30s.
I think
She's
she's up
done
to
doubles.
31, 32 now. Yeah.
Yeah, something crazy. And she's done doubles, she's done a triple, and she attempted a 4-way and didn't make it. So there was, just people from a practical standpoint who, I don't know, Sarah, you've only been here one time. And you just can't listen to them. You know what you've trained for, you know what you're capable of. Shut them out. They don't matter.
So it's interesting that there are so many doubters. How do you shut them out?
Number one, don't read what they have to say. And then number two, just you have to be confident in your abilities. I trained hard for this swim. I train hard. I am dedicated to this. When I put my money down and I say I'm going to do something, I work hard for my money. I'm not sponsored. And, if you're going to commit to doing something, then I'm committed all the way. And so, that means, a year of hard training. And when you get to the point where you've trained hard for an entire year for something, and you've sacrificed time with your family, with your friends, and, you've paid large sums of money to do something, then it doesn't matter what they say. You know that you're going to go out and do the very, very best that you can do, because you've sacrificed so much. So why wouldn't you give it everything that you have?
Now, as you say, you're not a sponsored athlete. You're holding down a full-time job. Obviously getting in some big training. What is your weekly routine prior to that 4-way?
Yeah, I'm really good at time management. So like just a general week for me, we don't have a ton of access where I live to open water, which makes it a little bit tougher. So I do spend a decent amount of time in a pool. So, Monday, Wednesdays are my open water days. We've got 2.5 hours in the evening where I can swim at a lake. So I utilize those 2.5 hours Monday, Wednesdays. Tuesday, Thursdays, I do a morning session and an afternoon session in the pool. Fridays, I always take off. And then Saturdays and Sundays, I go really long in the lakes here. Sometimes I do, a double on a Saturday where I get up and swim in one lake in the morning and then take a little break and then go swim, 5-6 hours in a different lake in the evening. So just the weekends are really where I have to get the big bulk of my training.
So your weekends, when you say long, so you mentioned 6 hours, 5-6 hours in the afternoon. How many hours in the morning?
2.5.
Okay, so you're doing 8 hours on Saturday, 8 hours on Sunday.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, you do crazy things, right? So just to get my, I've done back-to-back 12s, back-to-back 10s, back-to-back 6s. You just go and you swim, put your face down in the water and swim.
So how much of this, these long kilometers, I believe that it's more of the mental training than the physical training. What are your thoughts?
It's definitely mental. I've spent many hours trying to figure out what I think the breakdown is between having the mental edge, the physical edge, the right team, and then luck. So mental is a huge piece of it. And I do think it's more mental than it is physical. I mean, you have to be trained up, and some of the mental edge comes from all of the training. But when you're barfing your brains out at 30 hours in the English Channel and you're a little bit past halfway, I mean, you have to be mentally strong to fight through that darkness.
With your four-way, obviously quite a bit of sickness through that attempt.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't have any of that, was a five-way on the cards?
We had joked with my boat captain beforehand. He said, if you get to, four-way and you feel good for another 5, we'll negotiate the rate over the edge of the railing. And I kind of laughed him off. I hadn't really thought about it. But, in retrospect, if I had not been so sick, and we did have a little bad luck with the tides on lap 4. So, if the tides had cooperated a little bit better on the 4th lap, and if I hadn't been so sick, yeah, there's a good chance that I would have been itching for another lap.
Fantastic. Let's talk about that 4th lap, because it was a long one, 18 hours. But if anybody has seen your track of that 4th lap, you're floating up towards the ferry channels of Dover. They've obviously had to turn you around, swim you into the tides. I when I was watching this live, I was tracking this, and all of a sudden seeing how they had to turn you. What goes through your mind where your boat pilot has just said, "Okay, we've got to turn into the tides and push hard, almost sprint."
Right. Well, they didn't tell me all of that. We had when we came in for lap 2, there's some pretty noticeable lights on the shore in England. So, when I had left on the very first lap, I kind of looked behind me, so I knew what the shore looked like. So when we were coming back on lap 2, I knew exactly where we were. I could see where we were headed. And so, it was like very clear to me. And then on lap 4, I'm looking, for those landmarks in the dark and thinking, oh, where are we? We're in a weird place. So somewhere about the 48-hour mark, they told me we were stuck in a strange current and I needed to, pick up the pace for a while to try and get out of it so we could get into the British inshore waters. So they did give me that explanation in that moment. And so then, we made it through that and they told me I was successful and, we were going to get there, and then all of a sudden, things are really confusing. And I remember at one point saying, "Can you tell me how far we have left to go?" And they just said, "Well, we're almost there. We're getting there." And I was like, "I don't believe you." And I think it was Kevin Murphy yelled down at me, "They're not lying to you. We don't know." And that was the case. They're trying to get me in one place and the current's pushing me at another. And I could feel that they were getting stressed on the boat. And, I'm just swimming, right? And I'm asking, like, am I going fast enough? Do I need to push harder? And they're just telling me, no, you're fine, you're fine. And then all of a sudden, one of my crew members, Carl, he jumped in with me and he said, "Sarah, we have to sprint now if we're going to make it." And I didn't know why. I didn't know what was happening. But he said, we have to go as hard as you can go. And then we'll be done, basically. And so I did. I put my head down. I don't normally kick when I swim. And I started like literally kicking with all my might. The way the wind was blowing, water was going up my nose and down my throat, just in a weird cycle that has never happened to me before. I'm like gasping for air because my throat's swollen. And I literally, I could feel the water like pushing up against me. Like I could tell that I was in a current. I was swimming through some icy stuff. So I knew that the water was turning. I knew that I was fighting against it. I had no idea where I was. I had no idea how much further I had. I couldn't see, I had looked close for a long time. I didn't know. I just knew I was sprinting with everything I had. And then, maybe 45 minutes into the sprint, and I could tell that, they tossed me a feed and I was like, I don't want it. And Carl is next to me, swimming that, that your pace swimmer has to stay behind you. So he's, staying behind me, but I can tell he's working pretty hard to keep up with me. So I know that I'm doing a good job, and I think that I'm making progress, but I don't know for sure. And then 45 minutes into it, they bring out the rib, and I was like, oh, we're close. Like, and so then I kind of popped my head up, and I was like, I can actually see the shore. It's actually coming to me now. And so, that's motivation, just to keep, punching it as hard, really as hard as I could. And I didn't know for certain that I was going to land on shore until I could actually see the rocks coming up below me. And in that moment, I'll just never forget, like, I'm here. I made it. I have no idea where I'm at or what's happening, but here is the end. And I, try to stand up, and the waves knock you down. And so it's like, all right, I guess we're crawling out of this one. Yeah, so that last hour was probably some of the most intense swimming that I've ever done. Everyone on the boat, they're like the crew, the boat captains, everyone, they're all screaming their heads off and clapping and cheering. And you're like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm giving it everything that I can possibly give it right now, because I'm ready to get out of this ocean.
Wow, that's amazing to have to go through that at the 53-hour mark. Now, I watched it live. I watched it live. You crawling onto the shore, and sitting down and just sort of having a bit of a rest. Bit of a rest, probably a bit of an understatement, isn't it?
Yeah.
There are two things that are going through my mind at that point, and that I wanted to ask was the sense of achievement, but also, after going for 54 hours, are you completely aware of what has just happened?
Yes and no. One of the things that was probably the most disorienting for me in the whole thing was that there was such a crowd at the end. I wasn't expecting it. I've never had a group of people at the finish before. And then all of a sudden there's like news cameras in my face, and, people asking me questions. And so I think, normally when you finish a swim, you're the only one there, and you get that moment of, you can just sit there and like take in the moment, and, take a deep breath and look around and really reflect on what you just did. But because there were so many people there, I don't think I really kind of like comprehended what had exactly just transpired. I didn't know that there had been, thousands of people following me in the middle of it. I didn't know that the English news stations had picked it up. Um, I didn't know any of that. I had just been so focused on swimming. And so, it wasn't until like later that day, once I'd had, a chance to take a shower and take a nap and kind of think about it, and then, like see the messages and, read the emails, and then, kind of, oh, all these news stations and want to talk to me. Then I think is when it started to sink in, not necessarily what I had accomplished, but maybe what it had meant to so many people in the world who had followed it.
Yeah, obviously, finishing your cancer treatment only 12 months before your four-way, that meant a huge amount to everybody who has been touched by cancer, but also everybody around the world just looking at this as a just sheer determination of what the human mind can be. What makes you the most proud about that swim?
Cancer treatment does a lot of bad things to your body. Um, we didn't know the impact that chemo was going to have on my endurance. Chemo impacts your heart. We just didn't know what level I would be able to train at just because of going through chemo. And then, I had a mastectomy, and I have, an implant under my pec muscle. So that has stretched out my pec muscle. It gives me limited range of motion in my shoulder. We didn't know how I was going to be able to train through that. There was just so many unknowns, and my doctors obviously can't tell me what to expect, because I've never had anybody even attempt to do what I wanted to do. And so, really when I look at this swim, it's like I don't know, just a big, huge victory over cancer, and I am proud that I didn't let all of those things that could have derailed me and would have been a perfectly good excuse to, say, what, maybe I'm not going to do this anymore. So I am proud that, I didn't let limitations or setbacks or roadblocks get in my way. I am not as fast now as I was before cancer treatment. And that took me a really long time to wrap my brain around, like, can I still do this now that I'm a little bit slower and my shoulder doesn't work quite the same as it did? There's just so much self-doubt and fears to overcome in this swim. And I'm just, I'm proud that I didn't get out at halfway. I'm proud that I stuck it through. I'm proud that I believed in myself. There's a lot that went into this swim, and, it's pretty neat to me that I was able to, come back and recover and do something like this.
That's absolutely beautiful. Now, there are many times, and you've spoken a few times about moments when you wanted to quit, and
Mm-hmm.
how do you get through those patches, those really low patches?
Mm-hmm. Let me say this. I don't think there was a moment when I ever wanted to quit. I think there was a lot of moments when I thought maybe I should quit, if that makes sense.
Yes.
When you're throwing up and you're losing all of your nutrition, right? The logical part of your brain says, my body can't physically go on without calories and hydration. And so you start to just kind of spin out of control. Like, it's just not physically possible, is what you tell yourself. This isn't going to be possible. And when you're in your brain, and you keep that in your brain, it becomes really big. And so for me, and I learned this on Lake Powell, and I've utilized this lesson a few times, but for me, the biggest piece in overcoming those dark places is to tell my team about it. If I just speak it out loud and I say, hey, I'm scared, or I don't feel good, or I don't think I can do this, that gives them an opportunity to, number one, problem solve whatever my issue is, but two, to give me the feedback of, Sarah, you're still passing swimmers. I know you're throwing up and you're feeling terrible, but we can see these other swimmers out here and you're still swimming good. And it gives them the opportunity to say, we believe in you. We're strong. You're strong. And so just having that feedback from my team and that support that, like, they're not giving up on me, so I shouldn't give up on me. That really is what gets me through those dark places. I wish I could say something, my own mental fortitude or, my own determination. But really those darkest places, I have to give it to somebody else, and I let them hold it for me and give me back their positive energy and their belief. And I really try and internalize it so that I can, keep putting one arm in front of another.
Wow, that's fantastic. And what about the physical pain during these swims? What physically do you go through from a pain point of view?
Mm-hmm. So, I will say, I wasn't sure what to expect in a long saltwater swim, since my other two really long swims had been in freshwater. The most physical pain I've ever been in was in that Lake Champlain swim. Just I just can't express to you, like, my arms, my lower back, my hip flexors, just everything starts to just ache and to throb. Like there's like a muscle in my finger. I remember after Lake Champlain, like, I'm swimming and I'm trying to, like, wiggle my hand, and, like, God, my hands hurt. So there's just so much, just your whole body aches. I was getting, like, my swimsuit was rubbing in Lake Champlain. I came out with, like, something had, like, bit me all down my front. I had these strange welts all in my swimsuit. Like, if you want to talk about pain, that Lake Champlain was probably the hardest physical thing that I've ever done. And I didn't know what to expect from the salt water. And I do think, the extra buoyancy in salt water really helped my shoulders because, I remember even on lap 3, I'm like, God, I'm not in pain right now. Like I can tell I'm tired and I'm fatigued, in my shoulders and my neck, but like nothing hurt, which was amazing to me. Like my lower back wasn't hurting me. My shoulders weren't hurting. I was tired, obviously, but not pain. So, I've had people tell me before that salt water is harder to swim in than freshwater. And I'm here to tell you, freshwater is more painful.
Oh, I find freshwater very difficult. I must have a pretty good fat layer because I float pretty well in salt. Now,
Yep.
Now, someone like you obviously doesn't quit, never stops. What have you got coming up? Because I notice on your Instagram, you've got something going on with Mark Bryant. Can we share anything yet?
Oh, nothing definitive that I can share. I will say that, 2020, I don't have any long swims planned. So, I've got a couple, I'm doing End Wet in North Dakota, which is a 36-mile river swim. And I'm maybe looking at another, 20-mile or so swim. But I am maybe looking at some other opportunities in, 2021. I've got some ideas for some bigger swims. So we'll just have to see.
No sort of hints at anything?
It's all really new, so there's not a lot I can even hint at that might be accurate in 6 months if I was wrong. So.
Oh, okay, fair enough then. Now, the documentary, The Other Side, which has been funded through Kickstarter.
Yep.
Now, when's that due to be released?
It's still in production, so I don't know precisely. I know we're aiming hopefully for the summer, but that is all just kind of pending how the work goes. So we'll see. We do not have a definitive date, and it's not close enough, I don't think, that we could pinpoint an exact release date.
Excellent. Perfect. Well, Sarah Thomas, thank you very much. It's been so great having you here on Chats from the Chest Freezer.
Thank you. It's been great.